Well, why don't we give a nice big round of applause to our buddy from Boston. He is Michael Goulian.
By the way, talking about Goodyear, Rob, you know, after World War II, a lot of the fighters were available, and we continued racing here in Cleveland the years 1946, 47, 48, and 49. And I must say it was eventually the Goodyear-built Corsairs that dominated racing in those last 4 years of racing here at Cleveland. Legendary names like Cook Cleveland and Dick Becker, they got the pylon first before anybody else. And those were the big giant engines, F2G Corsairs with a 4360 cubic inch engine. The Cook Cleveland said he was pumping out 4,000 horsepower. In those series of airplanes, they qualified higher than any other World War II pursuit job, as they called them back then, any surplus fighter, and also qualified first and brought home the gold, especially in the last 3 years of racing. And that shut down, now it resumes at Reno, Nevada.
All right, look to the left with a smoke on. We're going to go back to a 600 horsepower Pratt & Whitney radial engine aircraft. James Leavelle. A wonderful growl at full power, 2,700 RPM, and that growl, in addition to the sound of the engine, is the sound of the Hamilton Standard propeller tips actually going supersonic, creating many sonic booms at 2,700 RPM. Now, the guy that you see flying today has a great story, because he was an enlisted guy in the Air Force working as a crew chief on F-4 Phantom IIs. They made over 5,200 of those airplanes as a degree, and then went into pilot training. The aircraft you see diving in was the advanced trainer in World War II, and bringing it to us here, this is Mr. Jim Leavelle. Different aircraft, including an airplane directly behind us here at Show Center. But now, Jim Leavelle, with over 2,500 hours in flying in his Air Force career, 100 flight hours later in the A-10, 6 combat deployments to the Middle East. He's got a number of personal decorations and unit awards, including 5 air medals. That you see here, the T-37 jet trainer, the T-38, the A-10, the B-17, the B-25. That was an advanced trainer during World War II, with production running from about 1938 to 1944. 5,500 pounds as he does the Cuban 8. It looks like a figure 8 lying on its side. And since he was training the Cuban Air Force pilots to fly aerobatics, he replied with 2 words in Spanish: Ocho Cubano, Cuban 8, and the 8 is stuck for over 70 years. Now, 200 miles aircraft over the top, 45 degrees up and to the left. He picked an imaginary spot in the sky and used the throttle, the elevators, that is known as the barrel roll. As he turns, his air shows smoke off. After he completed that, he'd move on to the basic trainer, like the BT. Hesitation. The BT-13 had an aircraft that was built of all metal, and but not quite as complex as this one here again. So important was this aircraft that it was not only used by the United States Army, Air Force, and the Navy, and the Marine Corps, but it was also used by the Royal Canadian Air Force and the Royal Air Force and nearly 30 other allied nations. Take a look at the photo pass. Look right down into the Navy called SNJ, called the pilot maker, and also known as the Texan because that's where it was manufactured by North American Aviation. This is a very unique paint job for a Navy trainer, and it's the one of about 15,000 that were built. I think about 1,000 still remain flyable here in the world, and that's the only one with this particular paint job on it. By the way, the air show smoke you see is environmentally safe. It is used, the oil that's used to do it is a paraffin-based oil that's used in the concrete industry to keep drying concrete from sticking to wooden forms. And since it has to be handled by humans, it is environmentally safe. So they put a 10-gallon container, they turn on a valve, and it injects that oil into the exhaust stack, and we get this great air show smoke. You know, Jim Leavelle from Troy, Ohio, is enjoying his air show life.
Coming over your right shoulder now, the T-6 Texan. There is a Texan too in the spectator area. It comes from Randolph Air Force Base. You can see it up close, and they wanted to keep the tradition of the trainer alive. So they said, tell you more about the pilots that brought that A-10, that brought in the T-6 Texan to the tight ground display. Tell you more about them later on today.
Jim Leavelle bringing it around for another pass, and the Thunderbolt II has its grandfather, if you will, back to World War II, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, and even the Lightning, the P-38 Lightning from World War II has had its name passed on to the new F-35 Lightning II that is being flown by the Air Force. All right, diving in right now. He'll put it on to about 200 miles per hour, 5,500 pounds of advanced trainer. And while he goes over the top in that barrel roll, he extends the gear. I want you to keep your eyes on the landing gear because we're going to have an opportunity to see a little different version of a landing gear, always fearing the dreaded ground loop. And that could break an airplane. And as a matter of fact, training accidents in World War II were very, very prevalent. We lost a lot of aviation cadets in training. Not as many as in combat, but a large number of cadets in training in World War II. Training has gotten better and better, and aircraft like the Texan II that we'll talk about later has helped make the Joint Primary Air Training System for the United States Navy, Marine Corps, and the Air Force a lot more reliable and very, very complete to turn out the best pilots for our armed services available. Watch as Jim Leavelle keeps his view over the nose. As he slows down, he'll come off the power and allow the tail wheel to touch down ever so gently. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please give a round of applause to Mr. Jim Leavelle. Danny Clisham, what do we have?
All right, Rob Ryder, thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to provide you with the official welcome for today, joining me on the stage is the president of the Board of Trustees of our Cleveland National Air Show. Please, a big Cleveland Labor Day welcome. He does not have. On behalf of the staff of the Cleveland National Air Show and all our wonderful volunteers out there, I want to welcome you to the greatest and Cleveland's greatest show off this earth.